What popular misconception about oil and gas would you love to set straight? Phew, where do I start? All right, what is Anasuria and what is your role? So, Anasuria is an operating company. It was established around 10 years ago. It's a joint operating company that was set up and established between Ping and Hibiscus. They each own 50% of the operating company, and the operating company is set up to run the Anasuria FPSO and its fields and infrastructure in the North Sea. It's an oil and gas operator, and we're about 100 miles east of Aberdeen, or 45 miles by helicopter. We employ around 150 people. We have around 110 offshore, with about 60 persons on board at any time, but with the rotations of crew, around 110. And we have around 32 staff and around 7 or so contractors, so around 150 persons are employed by the company. My role itself, I am the Chief Executive Officer. I have been with the company since 2017. I initially came in as the CFO, and I am now been since 2019 the Chief Executive Officer. What does the future look like for oil and gas in the North Sea? So we've had a few challenging years for sure in the UK North Sea, but we are a resilient bunch. I am an optimist, and I believe that we have an optimistic future in the oil and gas in the North Sea if we can overcome some of the current challenges with fiscal regime, etc. I think back and look back to my own time when I joined the industry and when I first interviewed for a role as a placement student back from RGU in Aberdeen. And when I look back to that, and one of the questions they asked me is, what is the oil price? And oil price was $22 a barrel. Which, today we find the oil price at 65 extremely low and challenging, but it's 22 then. And a lot of people were advising me at that time, this is probably not the industry. The UK North Sea is, on its way out. It's finishing up. There's not too much left. You'd be better trying to find a better role or a different industry. But here we are, 25 years later, and I think the industry still has a lot to give. We've got a lot of opportunity. We've got extremely talented people right across our industry and the supply chain. And I personally, if we can make some changes to the fiscal regime, I am optimistic that we still have a good future here in the UK North Sea. What is the biggest challenge currently facing the oil industry, and how is Anasuria tackling it? So I think the biggest challenge is that there's multiple challenges at the moment. There's a tough fiscal regime, as I say, with a high tax rate. We have a relatively low oil price at the moment. And one of my biggest concerns is that it's difficult to attract and retain talent on that basis. So looking at those and how Anasuria are tackling it. So we're trying to speak up. I feel an obligation to speak up on behalf of the people that work for me and talk about the challenges in the industry, and not just, step back and pretend nothing's wrong. The investment is hurting, things are slowing down, and we are seeing that's impacting jobs. But on the positive, we have great opportunities, and I want to see us realize that. I think in terms of the people, retention and attraction, it's, for me, quite tragic. We're seeing it's difficult for people coming into industry. We're not seeing a lot of graduates and younger engineers coming into the industry. They're maybe not seeing the longevity. And we're also on the flip side seeing a number of people who have phenomenal experience leaving the industry early. Maybe they're just seeing that they're tired maybe of some of the cycles that we've gone through, the ups and the downs that the industry has had. And there's a number of people that are leaving the industry early. So we have a people issue, I would say. That is definitely one of the challenges, and that's something that we need to retain the industry. What we're trying to do for Anasuria on that front, one thing I passionately believe in is developing the team from within and giving people opportunities. So we are a single asset operator, so it's sometimes difficult for us to offer some of the opportunities maybe that some of the bigger companies have, where you can say you can work on multiple assets or multiple countries. So what our goal is to give people a chance. We try and develop people, bring them through, and maybe step them up in their career a bit earlier than they would do in some other companies or some other jobs or careers. So that's something that we're trying to do, develop within, develop the people, give them an opportunity, and step them up. And then, as I say, trying to just flag and be balanced, not just saying what are the problems with the fiscal regime, but trying to give some solutions. So there's consultation underway on industry at the moment, which we're involved with. And we ourselves, as the operating company and our shareholders, are continuing to invest in the UK, and we have further opportunities that can be unlocked if we can improve the current fiscal regime. So those are some of the key challenges, I would say, and that's how Anasuria, we're trying to be as constructive and proactive to overcome those. What did you want to be when you were a kid? So probably like most kids, some form of sports person. Initially probably a footballer, but I think I retired in primary 7 was about my the peak of that when we got to the semi-final of the Dennislaw Cup. Knocked out with a controversial penalty, but never mind about that. Also a golfer. I was a keen golfer as a kid. I lived not too far from Hazelhead golf course in Aberdeen, so I spent my youth, kept me out of trouble there. Was a single figure handicap, so played a lot of golf and probably wanted to go down those routes, but lacked ability probably on both, and there's levels on everything. Another interest I had, I was quite involved with drama, and Aberdeen Children's Theatre was something that I was involved with through secondary school. And at the point where I was going to university, I was actually between, do I go to drama school or do I go to business school? I went to business school, for the record, and yeah, no, I haven't looked back since. I've not been involved with any amateur dramatics, although there's been plenty of drama in my career. What advice would you give to young people thinking about a career in oil and gas? Well, my advice, quite simply, would be go for it. I cannot speak highly enough, to be honest, of the industry. I was very lucky. As mentioned, I had a placement here in Aberdeen with a multinational company when I was in third year at university. And then I came back and worked for them as staff immediately after. And then I was transferred to Houston in the USA. And then I went on to spend time in Southeast Asia and Scandinavia. So the opportunities that you have in the oil industry are global. And we have phenomenal assets and operators also here in the UK. You know, I have the privilege of working with and dealing with and talking to the other MDs and CEOs and senior management from the other operators in Aberdeen. And, you know, they are all looking for talented people to come through. They have great jobs and they want to develop people. So I think if you are thinking about or looking to come into the industry, I would highly recommend it. All industries have challenges. The oil and gas one is no different, but it can give you a phenomenal career with phenomenal opportunities. And I genuinely have been so lucky to have spent, you know, almost 13 years living in different countries and having the chance to travel and be involved with exciting things. Where else in your career can you go to work on a helicopter? We get to deal with big drill rigs and big ships and boats and big toys. It's exciting. It's dynamic. It's 365 days a year. You know, it never ends. You do get holidays, but it is a great industry. And there's still, you know, oil and gas is going to be a big part of the energy mix for decades to come. So if you're thinking about it, I would say go for it. I have 2 teenage children myself. I would recommend both of them, if they can, to go into the industry. I think it's a phenomenal industry with great companies and great opportunities. What popular misconception about oil and gas would you love to set straight? Phew, where do I start? So, first one I think is that all oil operators in the UK are making excess or windfall profits. I think often the numbers that we see or hear about in the news, there are global profits. Very few multinational companies break down their profits by region. They just report a number. And if you actually look or could find out what the UK numbers were, they're, you know, a fraction of the numbers that are being reported. And what this often leads to is a pushback against industry because people see and feel, and we all feel, you know, in terms of some of the impacts of electricity and gas prices and things like that are going up. And it appears that oil and gas companies are making excess profits. As I say, you know, we are not. There's a range on that. And, you know, a number of companies such as ourselves are very marginal operators. You know, we have had to really address our cost base We've pretty much held our cost base flat actually over the last 5 years, or a reduction about 15% in real terms, just to try and maintain profitability within the asset. So I think that's a misconception, definitely, because the UK oil and gas, as I say, is struggling to be competitive because of that tax regime. So I think that's one misconception. The other misconception maybe is that the oil and gas industry is finished or isn't needed. Maybe is a broader one. So to be clear, oil and gas is needed. That's accepted by the Climate Change Committee, which are advisory to the government, where they issue and state that the UK will require about 12 to 15 billion barrels of oil equivalent to support energy right through to 2050. The UK currently is on track to produce about 4 or 5 billion. We could possibly get up to about half of the 15 billion if we can improve the current fiscal regime. However, even if we produce every single barrel of oil in the UK that we have, we're still not going to meet all of our demand. But that is going to come from somewhere. So I think, the perception that if the UK oil and gas business unwinds, that's maybe better for the environment or anything. I believe that's a major misconception, because that oil will come from somewhere. It's been shown to be, from a lower carbon intensity if we can produce it here. We can also invest in UK jobs, help grow the economy, and get that revenue back into the tax system also, which helps, the UK economy and businesses. So those are a couple of the major misconceptions that I would say in terms of oil and gas. And I think just aligning that as well with net zero, that's, net zero is net zero. Oil and gas is still part of that. The industry has been decarbonising significantly, I think between 30 and 40% over the last sort of 5-6 years, and will continue to do that. But oil and gas is required for decades to come, so we should produce it here in the UK and support, our UK jobs and UK businesses. How do you unwind when you're not in the office? So I have 2 teenage children, a wife and a dog, so I like to spend time with them. I'm not sure if it helps me unwind, but I'm a big Aberdeen football fan, so I do go to the games with my dad and with my children. So we always go for lunch before the games and then go to the games, so it's kind of nice to spend time. So I do that. I'm not sure it helps me unwind, to be honest. It probably winds me up half the time, but I do enjoy doing that. As mentioned before, I still like to play golf. It's great now. My son is also playing golf, so it gives me a perfect playing partner, and I can go out more often, so I do that. But again, golf is a very frustrating game, so I enjoy playing golf. And then I also like just going out for walks, to be honest, with my wife and with my dog. Again, Aberdeen, I've lived away from Aberdeen a long time, and sometimes you've got to come back to appreciate what you have. I'm very positive and talk up Aberdeen as a great city to live in. I'm lucky I live right in the city centre, basically, but I am able to go out of my house, let the dog off the lead, and we can go a walk up through forests and etc., forest walks away for an hour and a half at the weekend. So really like doing that. Other thing I like doing is going out and about in Aberdeenshire. So Aberdeenshire is absolutely beautiful. Love going to all the villages, up Deeside. On a nice day like we've had, fortunately, for the last sort of 4 to 6 weeks, it's difficult to beat. So just enjoy getting out in the countryside, going for walks, and spending time outdoors. Is it a rowie or a buttery, and how do you take it? So this is, I know, an age-old debate, but I'm going to add to the debate. I'm going to say for me, it's neither. Actually, in my house, we always just called them rolls. So I can remember from a young age my granda coming up. He used to have a Robin Reliance, so you could hear him from about 2 miles away, bombing round the corner, and he used to come in Saturday and Sunday and give us rolls, and always called them rolls in our house growing up. I checked this with my wife before, because when we moved back to Aberdeen, we both always called it rolls, and I said to her, what do you call them in your family? And they say rolls. So I don't know if it's a third bracket for rolls or if there's maybe just something, but my family, my wife's family, both live in different parts of Aberdeen, call them rolls. So neither, I guess, for me, is what it's called. And how do I take it? Quite simple. If it's a cold day, I like to warm it up with butter. and so that's most of the time. If it's maybe a bit warmer, I would tend not to heat it up and just have it with butter. No jam or bacon or anything like that. Just plain butter is how I like to take it.